I'm 29 years old, my partner is 30, and we recently had our daughter, Lily, 2 weeks ago. She is incredibly healthy and the light of our lives, but getting here has been a story worthy of a daytime soap opera. My ex-mother-in-law claimed that my baby was her grandchild, and then my partner's mother demanded a paternity test to prove that it was her son. So we cut contact, and now she's spreading falsehoods about us on Reddit. It all comes down to two very difficult mothers, my ex-mother-in-law and Mark's mother. To comprehend the current mess, I must briefly explain my previous marriage. I met my ex-husband, David, 31, when I was 22 years old. We were young, impulsive, and we believed we were deeply in love. We were married after about 8 months of dating, but it was problematic practically from the beginning. Simply incompatible. We were always arguing about everything from how to load the dishwasher properly to our long-term goal. He wanted to stay in our small hometown forever, buy a house with a white picket fence, and have children right away, while I wanted to focus on my career and possibly consider having children in my late 20s. We were married for just over a year before realizing it was a mistake. Big emotional breakdown. No betrayal, just a slow, painful realization that we were making each other unhappy, so we decided to get a divorce. It was surprisingly amicable. We didn't dislike each other, we just realized that we were better off apart. Since we didn't have any shared assets or children, the legal process was fairly simple, and my parents were supportive, even though they had never been big fans of David and thought he was a little unexciting, to be honest, and they only wanted me to be happy. David's mother, Susan, was a different story. She is the kind of woman who plans out her entire life and expects everyone around her to follow it, whether they like it or not. She is also very religious and believes that divorce is wrong in all situations. Susan had this vision of David and me as the perfect couple. It was very awkward and uncomfortable, and I tried to be kind and respectful, but I also had to be firm. I told her that I appreciated her concern, but the decision was final. She was devastated when we broke up, and she did everything she could to try to make things work out, including guilt trips, tearful phone calls, and even showing up at my apartment without warning with a marriage counselor in tow. That was completed roughly 7 years ago. I moved to a new city, got a fantastic job, and essentially started a new life. I broke off contact with David and Susan, but it wasn't malicious. It was just necessary for me to move on. We weren't friends on social media, and we didn't have any mutual friends, so it was a clean break. A year and a half ago, I met Mark at a work conference. We began talking during a break and started dating shortly after. Mark learned about my previous marriage from the start, and it wasn't a secret. I told him the entire story on our second date, and he was completely unfazed. He said it was in the past and didn't change how he felt about me. He had had a few long-term relationships. We just clicked over coffee. He was funny, intelligent, and kind, and he shared my passion for travel and adventure. We fell in love quickly. Unlike my relationship with David, being with Mark felt easy, natural, and exciting, and we had a lot in common. About 6 months into our relationship, I met Mark's parents. His dad, John, is the kindest, most easygoing man you'll ever meet. He welcomed me with open arms and instantly made me feel like a member of the family. Mark's mother, Carol, on the other hand, is a different story. She is sophisticated, very proper, and very opinionated. She is also very attached to Mark, her only child. From the first time I met her, I could tell that she was evaluating me and finding me lacking. She was courteous, but there was a noticeable chill in the air. She made a few subtle jabs about my divorce, but nothing overt. She also clarified that she expected Mark to settle down and have a traditional family, just like Susan had wanted for David. I tried to brush this off, assuming she was just protective of her son, and I hoped that she would eventually warm up to me, but she never really did. Her rude but minor remarks included things like, "Oh, you've been married before. That's interesting," or "I always believed that marriage is forever no matter what." When I found out I was pregnant about 8 months ago, it was a surprise but happy one. Mark and I had discussed having children in the future, but we weren't actively trying. We were both thrilled, but we decided not to get married right away. I would rather not have another rushed wedding, and I wanted to make sure that we were marrying for the right reasons, not just because we were having a baby. Mark fully understood and agreed with my decision, and we told our family. My parents were overjoyed because they had always wanted grandchildren. John was also thrilled, and he began discussing building a treehouse and teaching the baby how to ride a bike. The pregnancy itself went fairly well, but Carol was unhappy. She didn't say anything explicitly negative, but her disapproval was evident. She continued to say things like, "Well, I suppose it's not the traditional way to do things, and I just hope you're both prepared for the challenges of parenthood." She also began to strongly imply that we should get married before the baby was born. Carol continued to be a source of stress during the pregnancy. She would call me frequently, supposedly to check on me, but the calls always ended up feeling like lectures as she told me what I should be eating and how to do it. I was sick during the first trimester, but overall, I felt fine. Mark was very supportive. He attended all of my doctor's appointments, read all of the baby books, and even started learning how to cook, which was a small miracle. She even gave me a list of acceptable baby names, all of which were extremely old-fashioned. I tried to be understanding and patient, knowing that she was only trying to be helpful in her way, but it was exhausting, feeling like I was being judged and criticized all the time. Then, about a month before my due date, something entirely unexpected happened. I had not spoken to Susan or David for years, so I was shocked when I received a text message from a number I didn't recognize saying, "Is this OP? It's Susan, David's mom. We need to talk. It's about the baby." I showed Mark the text, and he was equally confused, so we decided that I should call her back to find out what was going on. She responded right away, sounding distressed, and said, "I know this is going to sound crazy, but I think the baby you're carrying is David's." I was stunned, unable to even understand what she was saying. I replied, "Susan, that's impossible. I haven't seen David in years." She explained that she had seen a picture of me on social media, where it appeared that one of my distant relatives had tagged me in a picture, and I was pregnant. She conducted some research, which I believe entailed looking through my online profiles, and concluded that the timing might work out. She was certain that I had secretly reconciled with David and that this child was his. I tried to calmly explain to her that she was completely mistaken, telling her about Mark and how long we had been together, but she refused to listen, insisting that I was being dishonest. I hung up the phone feeling completely shaken and confused after telling Mark everything. He was furious that Susan would accuse me of something so absurd, and he wanted to call her himself to vent his frustrations, but I persuaded him not to. I needed to keep my focus on the baby. The conversation ended with her threatening to show up at the hospital when I went into labor. I went into labor 2 weeks ago, and although it was a long and difficult labor, our beautiful daughter, Lily, was born. Mark was with me the entire time, and he was wonderful. We were in the recovery room, exhausted but elated. We decided to ignore Susan and hope that she would come to her senses, figuring she was just desperate for her son to have a child. It was a complete nightmare. I was still recovering from childbirth, emotional and completely humiliated when Susan burst into the room, followed by a very confused-looking security guard. She began shouting, "That's my grandchild. I know it. You need to tell the truth. You've been lying to everyone." Mark intervened and told Susan to leave, but she refused. When we got home from the hospital, I decided to call David because I hadn't spoken to him in years, and I felt like I needed to make sure he knew what his mother had done. He answered the phone, surprised to hear from me, and I explained the situation. He was horrified and apologized. The entire incident was extremely upsetting, and I was furious with Susan. He frequently defended his new relationship with Serene, saying that he had been keeping Serene a secret from his mother, Susan, because he knew how obsessed she was with him getting married again and starting a family, and he would rather not deal with her pressure. Serene and I have similar first names, though not the same. For example, imagine that my name is Serena and hers is Serene, close but different. Susan reportedly heard David talking to Serene on the phone about a month ago. She misheard the name, thinking he had said my name, and she instantly assumed that David and I had reconciled. David was a bit hesitant, and his words, not mine, hadn't corrected her. He reasoned that it would be easier to let her believe what she wanted than to deal with her reaction to his new relationship, so he told her that I was the one he was seeing. Susan's sister, who had only met me a few years prior, knew Susan's fixation with me and David, so she called Susan right away when she saw me extremely pregnant and being rushed to labor and delivery. That's how Susan ended up in my hospital room on the day I went into labor. Susan wanted to keep things quiet, which is why she hadn't heard from me. Convinced that I was carrying her grandchild, David apologized sincerely, saying he was foolish and should have told his mother the truth long ago. He also told me that he tried to speak to his mother, but she didn't believe him, assuming he was just covering for me. He claimed that he and Susan were moving to a different state to be nearer to Serene and that I wouldn't have to worry about her anymore. Mark was listening to the entire conversation and was upset, saying he couldn't believe how inconsiderate David and Susan had been. It proved that I wasn't imagining things, but it didn't address the larger issue. Carol. Mark had told his parents about the incident. I told him that although I appreciated the apology, what he and his mother had done was extremely upsetting, and I never wanted to speak to him or Susan again. After the incident at the hospital, John was understandably horrified because he couldn't believe Susan would do something so outrageous. Carol, on the other hand, was surprisingly quiet. She didn't defend Susan or criticize her either. She simply said, "Well, it's a complicated situation." A few days later, Carol visited us and brought a very expensive baby blanket for Lily, which was completely not my style. She held Lily and looked at her for a few minutes before getting down to business. She said, "Mark, I've been thinking a lot about this whole situation, and I think for everyone's peace of mind, it would be best if you got a paternity test." I was stunned to learn that she was implying that Mark looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and apology, and he said, "Mom, I'm not doing that. I trust her completely. This is absurd." Carol refused to back down, saying that it wasn't about trusting Mark. Rather, it was about being responsible and knowing for sure that Susan was wrong, and this baby was David. When I finally spoke up, I told Carol, I can assure you that this baby is Mark's. I haven't been with anyone else since we met. This is incredibly disrespectful." She gave me a stern look and said, "I'm just trying to protect my son." After that, things fell apart when Mark told his mother that he wouldn't even consider a paternity test and that she wasn't welcome in our lives if she couldn't trust him and respect his relationship with me. She stormed out, and we haven't spoken to her since. Mark has called her a few times, but she hasn't returned his call. John has called Mark, who is upset about the whole thing and feels caught in the middle. I told Carol that if she wanted to continue pursuing the DNA test issue, she could, but I'm a new mother trying to deal with the challenges of motherhood and this overwhelming family situation. I'm hurt and upset that Carol would question my integrity in Mark's paternity, and I'm also concerned about the long-term effects that this will have on Mark's relationship with his mother. I told her that if she couldn't believe that Lily was Mark's daughter without evidence, then she didn't need to be in our lives. As much as I wanted Mark to have a relationship with his mother, I also refused to be treated with such disrespect, and I most definitely don't want my daughter to grow up around someone who questions her place in our lives. It's been reassuring to hear that I'm not overreacting, and that Carol's behavior is totally out of line. Many of you suggested that I speak with Mark about establishing some clear boundaries with his mother, and you're right. Parents, any advice or suggestions will be taken into consideration. Wow, I didn't anticipate this post to go viral like this. Thank you everyone for your support and advice. I steered clear of the conversation because I was tired and didn't want to deal with any more tension, but it had to happen. So last night, after Lily had gone to sleep, Mark and I had a lengthy conversation. I told him how disrespected and hurt I felt by Carol's demand for a paternity test, and I also expressed my concern about how this was affecting his relationship with his father, John. Mark fully understood and expressed his frustration. He claimed that he had been making excuses for his mother for years, but that he was finally seeing her for who she truly is, a controlling, overbearing woman who cares more about her image than her son's happiness, not just because of the paternity test demand, but also because of her general behavior during my pregnancy. He told me that he tried calling her again, but she didn't pick up, so he left her a voicemail. He told her that he was disappointed in her and that he would not be getting in touch with her again until she apologized to me and accepted Lily as his daughter without any doubt. He also mentioned that he had spoken to John once more and that John was deeply saddened by the circumstances. He loves Carol, but he also knows that she is at fault. He informed Mark that he was thinking of staying with us for a while just to give Carol some space and to spend time with Lily. Mark and I decided that we would take John in stride because we have an extra bedroom and Lily loves him. It would be wonderful to have his assistance, and it would also provide him with a break from the stressful atmosphere at home. Some of you inquired about my parents and why they weren't more involved, which is a valid question, and I should have mentioned in the original post that my parents live quite far away on the opposite side of the nation, are both in their late 50s and not in best of health. They find it very difficult to travel long distances, especially with all the limitations and worries these days. We speak to them virtually every day via video call, and they love Lily even though they live far away. They are also very supportive of Mark and me, and they were incredibly upset when I told them about Susan's hospital outburst and Carol's behavior after that. They said that if John needed a place to stay, they would gladly contribute some money, and asked me to find him a good retirement home. That was very kind of them, and that's where things stand right now. Carol is still giving us the silent treatment, and John is considering moving in with us. They wish they could be there to help, but they are just physically unable to. Their love and support mean the world to me. Things have gotten worse, so Mark and I are trying to concentrate on being parents to our wonderful little girl. I'm not trying to please Carol or cater to her emotions anymore. What matters most is my family. I'll keep you informed of any new developments. Thank you again for your support. A few days ago, John came to stay with us. He brought a small suitcase and a very downcast expression. He told us that since Mark's last phone call, Carol had hardly spoken to him and had been cold and distant. He couldn't handle it any longer, so he spent the first day mainly just talking to Mark and cuddling Lily. He seemed so relieved to be free of the stress and negativity, and he kept saying how much he loved Lily and how thankful he was to be able to spend time with her. Then yesterday, Carol arrived at our door. Naturally, I was in the nursery feeding Lily when the doorbell rang. Mark answered it, and I could hear Carol's voice loud and agitated. When I emerged into the living room, the scene was tense. Carol was standing in the doorway, looking furious, while John was sitting on the couch, looking defeated. Mark was standing between them, his arms crossed, and Carol demanded that John come home right away, saying that he was being unreasonable and that he was making her feel uncomfortable. She accused me of manipulating him and turning him against her. John attempted to speak, but Carol would not let him. Instead, she continued to rant, accusing me of a variety of things. Eventually, Mark had had enough and told Carol clearly that she was not welcome in our home until she apologized to me. I felt terrible for John because he looked so lost and confused and kept apologizing to me even though he hadn't done anything wrong. Carol looked stunned and wasn't used to Mark standing up to her. She hesitated for a moment before turning on her heel and leaving, closing the door firmly behind her. After John had gone to bed, Mark and I spoke and decided that Carol's behavior was completely unacceptable. We decided that we needed to set some even stricter boundaries. Mark texted Carol to let her know that we would not be communicating with her again until she saw professional help for her controlling behavior and apologized. We told John that we loved him and were happy to have him. It's been about a week since Carol's dramatic visit, and we haven't heard from her at all. No calls, texts, emails, or anything. John, on the other hand, has settled in nicely and is a huge help with everything. He and I both said that we loved her, but we couldn't allow her to continue to disrespect us and disrupt our lives. It's sweet to see that he started talking more openly about his marriage and that he's been unhappy for years. He told Mark and me that Carol has always been controlling, but it's gotten worse over time, and that he feels like he's lost himself in the relationship. He reads to Lily, sings to her, and takes her for walks in the stroller. He's slowly opening up and has started seeing a therapist, whom Mark and I encourage. He claims that the therapy is helping him process his emotions and determine his goals for the future. He says that even if Carol apologizes, he needs to consider what's best for him. For the first time, Mark is completely supportive of his dad. Whatever he decides, he's just happy that John and Mark are fully on board, and John has offered to help with childcare. As for me, I'm trying to concentrate on Lily and on making our home a loving, peaceful place for our family. I'm still hurt and disappointed by Carol's behavior, but I'm trying not to let it consume me. I've started thinking about returning to work part-time because my maternity leave is almost over, and I miss using my skill. It's odd to consider celebrating a significant milestone without Mark's mother present, but I honestly don't see any other option. She made her decision and must live with the consequences. I'm still holding out hope that one day she'll change her mind and apologize, but I'm not expecting it. Lily's first birthday party will be a small, intimate gathering with only close family and friends. Carol will not be invited. A few minor but important events have occurred. First, John filed for legal separation from Carol after consulting a lawyer and deciding that, at least for now, it was the best course of action. He informed Carol of his decision, which she naturally did not take well. She called Mark, crying and shouting, accusing him of turning against his father. A few days later, we received a cease and desist letter from Carol's lawyer, requesting that we stop spreading false and defamatory information about her. She's claiming that we've been telling people that she's mentally unwell and that she's a bad grandmother, which is completely unfounded. Mark remained composed and told her that John had made his own decision and that she needed to respect it. Naturally, we haven't discussed her with anyone outside of John's confidential therapist. We believe she is merely attempting to scare and pressure us into backing down. Mark spoke with his attorney, who suggested that we disregard the letter, stating it was baseless and that Carol had no legal ground. As a result, John is legally separated from Carol, and we're dealing with the aftermath. We're trying to remain strong and united despite the unsettling legal threat. On a brighter note, Lily is doing well and is growing up so quickly. She began to smile and babble. She is always the most incredible little person, and she makes everything so much more joyful, our existence.